Alright, chill out for a second, please, before you start rivaling Stephen King novels in my comment section. I know the title is harsh. I had to get you to click on the video somehow, bro. You gotta respect the hustle. Please chill on me, please. Seriously though, Ace is one of my favorites in the series, of course. He's slipped down my list a little bit as I progressed through, naturally, But as soon as I caught up to One Piece, to commemorate the journey, I got Ace's tattoo on my forearm, cause that's my fucking dog. But as the years go on and he becomes a distant memory in the One Piece timeline, every time he graces my mind, I can't help but think, did he really even come close to reaching his potential? I think the simple answer to that question is no, and it's plain to see. He had Pirate King level potential, but didn't even sniff Emperor level. He's low-key brawny when you think about it, bro. But did Ace make himself ass? Did Ace make himself look weak in hindsight? Did Ace say he has all three forms of Haki, yet we never saw him use any of them except for that one time when he was 10 years old? No, he did not. Ace didn't do any of these things to himself. There is only one man who's responsible for this travesty, and it's none other than the man I glazed to no end, Ichiro Oda. Oda let these powerful forces of One Piece's pre-time skip, like Whitebeard, but especially Ace, get power crept to all hell when they were top threats in the verse when they were around. But what is power creep, you might be asking yourself, dear viewer? Well, I'm here to break it down to those of you who aren't familiar with the concept. Power creep is most closely associated with online games that are played competitively because it happens most commonly in these spaces, and that is because game developers are all related to Mr. Krabs.
Hello, I like money.
We're already talking about anime, so I'm going to stick to it with the example being Naruto. At the start of Naruto, we see how quickly someone can lose their life in the world of ninjas. Simple kunai and senbon were as deadly as a big jutsu was in the right hands, but by the end of part 1, ninja tools and typical weapons you'd associate with ninja are completely obsolete because no one is ever threatened by them anymore at this point in the story. That's unfortunate, but it's not a deal breaker. There were still plenty of ways ninja could be useful without using ninjutsu or having a broken Kekai Genkai. By the halfway point of Naruto Shippuden, taijutsu is practically useless. They do it sometimes to add aura to fights, but a taijutsu specialist like Rock Lee does literally nothing throughout the rest of the story beyond this point, because the only thing he can do has once again been made obsolete. And as we all know, by the end of Naruto Shippuden, there were moon gods and shit. If you weren't an Uzumaki or an Uchiha, you could kiss your plot relevance and screen time goodbye. And at this point, if you showed someone who never watched an episode of Naruto a scene from the Final War arc, they would not guess this shit was about ninjas, bro. It made no fucking sense. That is power creep, albeit to an extreme sense. Gradually amping up the power level of your story to the point where the most basic and early on power systems and techniques, or sometimes even entire characters, get thrown to the wayside because they legitimately cannot keep up. Applying this definition to One Piece, we can see how power creep exists in the story and how, even though it is more subtle than my previous example, it can still cause major issues for the story moving forward. Some would say it already has caused these issues that I'm talking about, and nowhere is it more obvious than the hierarchy of devil fruits in the story. We all know the three categories of Logia, Zoan, and Paramecia, but what do I mean by hierarchy? Pre-time skip, there was no argument what the best type of devil fruit was. Everyone with eyes and ears reading the story knew that Logias were the strongest type of devil fruit. At least on average. There are some bummy ones, but you know what I mean. It was clear that Logia were one, and then from there it could be debated, I guess, but if we're going off of pre-time skip strictly, I think it's clear that Paramecia fruits are displayed as the second best typing. Powerhouses like Luffy and Kuma demonstrate their dominance with their Paramecia fruits. Yes, obviously I do know that Luffy's fruit is not a Paramecia, but he uses it like one pre-time skip, and as far as he knows, that is what his devil fruit is, so I'm counting it. But even if you don't want to count Luffy, Whitebeard's fruit was considered so powerful that it rivaled that of a Logia, so that alone should show that there was definitely a hierarchy between the typings. In my opinion, Zoan is in a clear last place in terms of pre-time skip. There weren't many strong examples of powerful Zoan fruits at the time. It was Chopper and fucking Robert Lucci until Marineford, which barely makes the cut as pre-time skip anyway. And then just like that, at the start of Marineford, almost the halfway point of the series, something shifts. Two massively powerful Zoan devil fruits appear in Marco's Phoenix fruit and Sengoku's Buddha fruit. These two fruits also introduce us to the mythical subclass of Zoan fruits, which clearly trump all other devil fruits. They have the same three transformations that normal Zoans have, but they also have what I would like to call a passive ability. I don't really know how else to refer to it other than that, but every mythical Zoan that has a good amount of screen time has some ability that their devil fruit provides to them that isn't part of a transformation. Luffy obviously is made of rubber, but that is more of a side effect from the Nika fruit than its main ability. Marco's flames that are produced from the Phoenix transformation have incredible healing properties, and Katarina Devon has the nine-tailed fox fruit if you don't remember, and that one we haven't even seen the transformation for, but we know about her passive ability, which is basically just Bon Clay's fruit, which is fucking insane. Imagine your devil fruit is just an added bonus in someone else's, bruh. That is some bullshit. Mythical Zoans are a textbook example of power creep because in current One Piece, if Oda is going to introduce a top tier or even just a new character that is powerful, their fruit will be a mythical Zoan 99% of the time. It's his new meta, whereas before the time skip, it would have just been a Logia. So what does this all have to do with Ace? Well, Ace is the perfect character to point to when you think of power creep in One Piece. As we just talked about, he has a Logia fruit, and at the time of his introduction in Alabasta, it was very clear that he was significantly stronger than Luffy, and part of that reason was because of the Logia devil fruit he had. That is part of the equation, but the much bigger reason he was head and shoulders above Luffy was because he was the 2nd Division commander for Whitebeard, an Emperor of the Sea. At this point, Luffy had never met an Emperor, and no, Shanks doesn't count, he wasn't an Emperor when he left Windmill Village. So this was a monumental position for Ace to be in, and it gave him this air of importance to the One Piece world as a whole, and not just to the reader because he's Luffy's brother. It really felt like he was a top threat in the verse at the time, but lots of time passes before we see him again in a plot-relevant situation. After the Straw Hats narrowly escape Water 7, in chapter 440, Ace finally finds Blackbeard. He had been hunting him down in the Ace's Great Blackbeard Search cover story for killing Thatch, a beloved member of the Whitebeard Pirates, for the Dark Dark Fruit. Here is where I have another issue with how Ace is written. He, of course, loses this fight, and he kind of has to for the story to progress. I'm not upset with that, but the way in which he lost is really frustrating, I'm not gonna lie. Yes, Haki was not fully fleshed out yet at the time, but I think trying to argue Haki wasn't thought about at all by Oda until post-time skip is nuts. Luffy uses Conquerors multiple times before he knows what he's even doing. Rayleigh blocks Kizaru's kick with his bare leg in Sabaody, and so on. In my opinion, Oda had a clear idea on what he wanted Haki to do. At least it's clear that he knew he wanted armament haki to counter Logia Devil Fruits. Not only is Ace confirmed to be able to use all 3 haki forms, but he's a fucking Yonko commander. Of course he would know how to be able to use armament, and yet he does not against Blackbeard. Hindsight makes this fight so fucking bad because there are only 2 possible explanations. One is that he's so fucking arrogant that he thought he could beat another Logia user with his own Logia. Or 2 is that he's so fucking dumb that he just forgot to use it. I guess. I don't know. Either way, terrible fucking look for the kid, man. So this looks bad, right? But it doesn't really seem like power creep? Wrong. It becomes clear as day that Ace has been power crept to all hell when you start comparing Yonko crews. In the One Piece power scaling community, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I just brought up those people. But they got good terminology sometimes. They use Yonko, Yonko Commander 1, and Yonko Commander 2 as tiers for a character's strength. But being a Yonko Commander 2 in the story does not guarantee that you'll be at a Yonko Commander 2 level of strength. And nowhere in the story is this more apparent than in Ace's case, unfortunately. Ace is a Yonko Commander 2 in the story, but he doesn't stack up to any of the other Yonko Commander 2s that we've seen. Queen, dog walks Ace. Crocodile, dog walks Ace. Sanji beats the shit out of Ace. Pero fucking Sparrow is beating Ace, bro. This is bad, man. I haven't seen Lucky Roo do shit since he blew that dude's brain out in episode 4, and he probably still beats Ace. Again, don't get me wrong, man. It hurts to say this shit. I love Ace, but he has lost the race to Father Time. Or Father Oda, I guess. He really didn't have to do this shit. Speaking of fathers, probably the most disappointing thing about Ace was that, of course, his dad accomplished the one thing no one else could and became the Pirate King. The world's strongest man, which is a fraudulent title, by the way, but that's a story for another day. Whitebeard put all his chips into Ace being the King of the Pirates' successor and the man Roger was looking for, aka Joy Boy. But by the way the list of One Piece's top tiers looks, it feels like he never had the chance to even sniff the One Piece, other than the sole fact that he was Roger's son. That is what is most disappointing, because if you look back on Ace's story arc with the context of the rest of One Piece, you'll quickly realize that him becoming the Pirate King was entirely implausible because of Oda's poor management of power creep within the narrative of One Piece. Of course, I love One Piece and Ace still, and this is a small gripe with the story that I wanted to yap about because that's what I do. Honestly, Ace is already dead, so this really does not matter. It's just something I wanted to point out and I thought it would make a cool video. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by leaving a fella a like, man, a little subscription, you know what I'm saying? I work hard on these videos, and if you enjoyed this one, there are more like it on the way. Thank you for watching. Until next time.